right, guys, we are here for Patriot Podcast episode 2, and we are here with another one of our future proud patriots that is going to be on our cans. And as we mentioned previously, Patriot Hard Seltzer is all about giving back and honoring those who serve this country in various capacities. So the military, the veterans, the first responders, the nurses, everyone who serves this country on some level. We want to give back, honor them, support them, and tell the stories of them. So we are here today with one of those people. Jason's going to give a brief intro, and let's get into it.
Yeah, guys, I met this individual in New York probably, 10 years ago at least. Maybe closer to 12 years ago. And FDNY firefighter who was there on 9/11. And for any of you guys we were actually just talking to Justin about this, really 25. If you're over 25, for the most part, you will remember 9/11. We're starting to get to a point where you're going to have to be probably 27, rough or take, depending on what your memory and how much your parents involved you in it. But any of us that are older than that, you remember exactly where you were on that day. I will never forget. I was in the military. I just started the commissioning program with my best friend, Bobby Ramirez, when we were between classes. When we knew we found out that the towers had fallen. I won't get into all those details, but boy, what a monumental day that changed the world. And I'll tell you, those who were there firsthand were the individuals who were in the towers, all the amazing FDNY firefighters. We lost 343 firefighters, law enforcement professionals on that day. And I met this individual in an event, and man, we just connected. Both of us had obviously been through a lot, mine on the military side, his on the fire, and losing so many close friends, including best friends, which I could relate to with what I had been through in the military. But we became great friends, and I tell you, his story is absolutely incredible, guys. He is the epitome of a proud patriot. He loves his country. He loves New York. He was instrumental in helping. He's one of the founding members of the 9/11 Museum, and he has dedicated his life to giving back, taking care of those who have been through trauma, and also taking care of the firefighter community and the military community. You've done so much on both sides. So we are honored to name our first official firefighter, proud patriot, my brother, Tim Brown.
Hello, Jay.
Yeah, love you too, bro.
I'm proud to be a proud patriot.
Yeah, you are. You are a proud patriot. Now you're just officially.
I'm honored. Thank you very much, Jay. We don't have enough of this in America, and I want to instill it, especially in the new generations coming up. I really want to instill patriotism and remind them how lucky we are to be in this country, to live in freedom, to live in equality, right? I took the Afghan female tactical platoon to the Statue of Liberty. These are bad women who fought with America in the global war on terror because they wanted education and freedom for themselves, but also for their daughters.
Yeah.
And we need to spread freedom and patriotism all around. I think sometimes people who grew up here don't realize how lucky they are compared to the rest of the world. So
I talk about that so much. We if you grow up with freedom, it's kind of you take it for granted. It's like breathing air. Yeah. It's just there. You never think about like, oh, what would happen if suddenly the air went away? No one thinks that way. And unfortunately, if you live in a country where freedom's always been there, you don't.
And there are always people who want to take it away from you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a constant battle forever, and we have to keep fighting. Whether you're military, first responder, or just a patriot who speaks out about it, we need to keep fighting for that. And I am a very proud patriot, and honored to be on the side of the can.
Yeah, it's one of the big things that when Justin and Brandon founded Patriot Seltzer, that was one of their goals. They wanted to honor the protector community. I became the first proud patriot, so it's so exciting. It is the vision of the company that we will continue to honor and find additional proud patriots. So we will have, Tim Brown, and we just announced Lou Veloce. We'll have another one coming soon. And then, guys, we will keep these amazing Proud Patriots on the cans for a year or two, and then we will honor more. And it's going to be really exciting. We're actually going to have some limited edition, special edition Proud Patriots. That's something we will be announcing and launching in the future. But a lot of really cool things. So
yeah, it's very cool seeing the vision come to life and having someone such as yourself and Lou to be able to be on these cans and kind of tell the stories of, because it was the vision from the start, was like find people that served to the utmost level and have an amazing story to tell and tell that on the cans. So we're glad to have you on the cans.
Thank you, brother.
Let's dive into your story a little bit. So sorry, go ahead.
No,
let's go back to the beginning, though. Let's go back to the beginning, because 9/11
born
was
in
such
19.
a pivotal. Yeah, it was a dark, stormy night. So
not really. Never mind.
Yeah,
take us through getting into the career of.
What led you to become a firefighter?
For the youngsters out there, I was a bad boy when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. I was getting in trouble. I was not doing well in high school. I was angry at the world. I didn't have a path or a passion or a mission, and
I want to say something, because this is a critical thing. There's a lot of you out there that are the same way. You've lost your way. I'll be honest. The military kept me from getting in trouble. I had friends that were going down the gang road.
Yeah.
They were getting involved in drugs, and because I knew I wanted to go in the military, it kept me from doing that. But anybody who's watching, man. Living proof. There's so many guys who become protectors because they don't want a 9-to-5 job. There's something in them that they need.
A bigger passion.
Yes.
A different passion.
Yeah.
And I love people, and I loved helping people. And my when I was 15 years old, my 16-year-old friend, Jay Walsh, told me that he was a junior fireman in Newington, Connecticut. And my eyes were as big as saucers when I found out I could be a junior fireman. And I went to the first meeting on a Wednesday night, and Jay called me a few days later, and he said, "You're invited back next Wednesday, but you can either be a junior fireman or be stoned. You can't do both." So you have to make a choice here. And luckily,
he didn't mean like literally, like biblical times.
Maybe that's what they wanted to do to me. But yeah, I chose the right thing, and I became an EMT, and I was a junior fireman. Then I was a volunteer fireman. Then I was a paid fireman in Connecticut. And then in 1984, I got the invitation to join the FDNY. And I just want to say, I worked very, very hard to get that invitation. I got a 100 on the written exam. I got a 100 on the physical exam, and that was not easy. But I was driven, I was passionate, and I wanted to be a South Bronx fireman.
And if anybody doesn't know, the New York City Fire Department, the FDNY, is considered the premier firefighting force in the world for large cities. I mean, you guys, over the history of that department, developed some of the people come from all over the world to learn firefighting tactics and techniques from the 100%. New York City Fire Department.
It is true. And so I was a South Bronx guy in the engine company, the hose and the water. Then I was a ladder company or truck company fireman in Times Square, forcible entry and search and rescue and things like that. And then I was lucky enough to be invited to go into special operations in the New York City Fire Department, the elite of FDNY, and possibly some of the most elite firefighters in the world. And so I went to Rescue 3,
like the Navy SEALs of firefighter or something.
Well, I've heard of them.
Is that like?
So
was that like too much self-promoting?
What does special operations look like in the firefighting world? Like, what type of things are they doing?
They're the most experienced, most highly trained firefighters, both for being a firefighter in the conventional sense of the word, but also in things like scuba or extrication from a train or or special cutting tools, or building collapse, or
ropes work. And
yeah, all that high angle rescue. I mean, the heavy rescues, the special operations in the fire service in America are very highly trained in many different things. And I got to Rescue 3, the Bronx Harlem Special Operations Heavy Rescue, and we were the building collapse unit for the city at the time. So we did all building collapses in New York City, and so as you can imagine, we were fairly busy. I learned a lot there. I had a lot of fun there. I met some of the greatest men, greatest firefighters in the world, and they became my friends. And in that command, there were what did we lose? Like 1/3 of the command on 9/11, because they were all the guys that ran up the highest in the towers and were in harm's way the most. Not taking anything away from anybody else at all, but so I did that stuff, and then in 1998, I was pulled away to work for Mayor Giuliani, who was and is a friend of mine, and in his newly created Mayor's Office of Emergency Management, 7 World Trade Center, 23rd floor, and that's where I was on the morning of September 11th. The Flight 11 flew over the roof of our building and slammed into the north face of the North Tower. And that was the beginning of, part of the beginning of the attack on America by the Islamist terrorists, Al-Qaeda.
Let's slow down a little bit. I want to go back to like that morning. What was were you just doing a regular routine that day? What were you doing and thinking leading up to that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I knew, it was a normal day. At the time, I had been promoted within OEM to being a supervisor of field operations. So it was my job to go to the scene of any big disaster or emergency in the city and represent the mayor, and then call the mayor and say, this is what's happening at this emergency, so he could decide if he wanted to show up or not. Rudy was a very hands-on guy, so he did show up a lot and showed that he cared about the people of New York City in any neighborhood. So I went into work that morning around 8 a.m., 7:45, 8 a.m., and I always went to the cafeteria on the 3rd floor, and I was sitting there eating my Cheerios, drinking my orange juice and hot tea, and the power went out in the building, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't see anything or hear anything, but the people who were facing the glass that was facing the North Tower all at once jumped up and started running. Within 5 seconds, the power came back on. I knew we were on backup generators. I knew something big had happened. I didn't know what. And I actually had to grab a young lady by the shoulders and shake her back to reality and look her in the eye and say what happened. And she said a plane hit the tower. So that's how I found out about it.
So they were by the windows and they saw?
Yeah, they were right by the windows. I didn't hear or see anything where I was. So my job is to go to the command post, which is in the lobby of the North Tower. I went to my car to get my helmet and my mayor's office jacket and my heavy leather boots. And we're trained as firefighters that before you go in a building that is under destruction, whether by fire or collapse or a plane hitting it, you always try to look at 3 sides of the building to get a current size up of what's happening. And I wanted to take a minute to do that. So I slammed the trunk of my car, I put the helmet on, I went up an exterior concrete staircase from street level to plaza level. And it was the plaza that's in between the towers. That's where I had to go so I could get a view of the building. I ran up that staircase because that's what we do. That's what our uniform folks do. That's what cops do. They run toward gunfire. That's what our military does. I was just reading one of Jay's coins out in the hallway, and it's exactly what it said, that we run toward the gunfire, right? We run toward the disaster. We run toward the emergency. But that staircase later in the morning was used by probably thousands of civilians to escape and to live. Mm-hmm. So that staircase becomes known as the survivor staircase in the 9/11 museum. It probably saved thousands of lives. But very early on here, I'm running up the staircase, and I looked at the building. There were horrible things happening. I started to realize that my original assumption that it was a small plane was wrong, and that it was probably something bigger. I went into the North Tower at that plaza level, but the command post was down like one and a half stories on a big long escalator. So there were hundreds of civilians trying to get on that escalator to escape. They were being directed that way by the Port Authority employees, Port Authority police, to get them underground. There's an underground mall, get them away from the buildings so they didn't get hit by parts of the building, plane, or other objects that were falling. And I noticed that these people were not doing, it was like a funnel, and they were not doing what you would expect them to be doing, like running, trampling each other, pushing someone out of the way. It was the opposite. For every person who was pregnant, obese, injured, disabled, there were 4 or 5 office workers, not cops or firemen, office workers helping that person. And it gave me hope, because that no matter what happens today, we're going to be okay, because that's the true spirit of humanity.
Yep.
99.9%. Do we have evil? Certainly we have evil, and we know it, right? But there's a lot more people that are good people and want to help. And so that lifted me up in hope right there at the beginning of this tremendous disaster that was about to happen. And
at that point in time, like you obviously had no idea what was to continue to happen. So,
no idea.
I mean, you just thought it was an isolated thing. You were going to try to address it, I imagine. Like what was going through your head then?
Well, we knew we had a big problem. Just this part of it was a huge disaster.
Yes.
We had probably 10 floors from around the 89th, 90th floor up of jet fueled fire. Each floor was an acre. So that meant we had about 10 acres of jet fueled high-rise building fire. There's no way you can get enough water up there to fight that fire. So we knew we couldn't put it out, which is very difficult for us to admit.
Yeah.
So what the chief said to the mayor was, we can put everything, we can rescue everyone below the fire. Mm. And then he didn't say anything else. And the inference was, all those people, we can't help them.
Wow.
And that is not an easy thing for us to say. But we knew we were going to try to get to them, but, it's like the worst thing you tell a fireman. You can't, it's like you being on the battlefield and your brother is pinned down and you can't get him. It's like like a cop, in a shooting or something. There are guys maybe shot up like you were, and you can't get to them. It's the most horrible feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Helplessness is a tough thing for a helper to swallow. So, and that's where we were at that moment. I saw my best friend, Captain Terry Hatton, same thing. And I went down that escalator with these people. And as the lobby revealed itself, it was this big, huge lobby, like 3 stories tall. I looked out over the lobby and I saw hundreds of firefighters awaiting their order to go up, right? And they all had their gear on with the protective gear with the yellow stripes, and maybe 100 pounds or so of equipment that they were going to carry up. And it gave me a little smirk on my face, because I had to admit that the cops were right, which is never easy for a fireman to admit the cops are right. And and we always give it to each other, right? But the cops called us bumblebees. And I was looking at a hive of bumblebees in that North Tower lobby, and now I understood what they were talking about. And that vernacular becomes to me the hive of heroes, because it was hundreds of heroes who were waiting to go up. And I got to the bottom of the escalator. There was a bumblebee right there. I looked over, and I looked up at his face. It was my friend, Firefighter Chris Blackwell from Rescue 3. who I'd worked with for 7 years on the same shift. So we were like real brothers, like you and I, Jay. And we always greeted each other the same way. And we turned toward each other, so we were facing each other. And he reached with his arm in a big arc like this. And he takes the unlit stub of a cigar out of his mouth and he puts it back down at his side. And as soon as his arm gets back down to his side, we both bend at the waist. And we come into each other, kiss on the lips. And then we come back to attention. And after we did that and said, "I love you, brother," we just looked around to see what the reaction of all the cops and firemen were around us. and yeah, they all got weirded out or whatever. So we did it because we loved each other genuinely, but we did it because it freaked out all the cops and firemen around us, and we loved upsetting them.
It's interesting that in a time of like of chaos and everything, like you're seeing
Rituals.
and you're seeing the hive of honeybees, and you're like thinking about this humorous thing. Like it's
I mean it's just a true story. And after we came back to attention and he put the cigar back in his mouth, he said to me, "Timmy, this is really bad," and for us to say that to each other is significant. Because we do bad normally. And I said, "I know, Chris, I love you, be careful." And he said, "I love you too." And after he said that, he went up the stairs to save the lives of people he didn't know. And so in that moment, he had a choice, right? We have free will. He could have turned around, take off his helmet, and gone home to his loving wife and children. But he didn't. He chose to go up that stairwell to save the lives of people he didn't know. And I speak about this a lot. I think about it a lot, and things come to me, I guess. And what Chris Blackwell did that day, as the last act of his life, he chose. The last act of his life would be an act of the greatest love, as it says in the Bible. And he is the most shining example of what all the firefighters and police officers did that day, and others. But none of them said no. None of them turned around and went home. There were too many people that needed them and needed help, and they were all willing to do that. I would have done it, but my job was to be in the lobby. I didn't go up. And in some ways, I wish I did go up, because I wanted to be with my friends, and maybe I could have helped one of them or something. I don't know. But
when did you know the second tower had been hit?
So a fireman came running into the lobby where we were in the North Tower lobby, yelling that the South Tower had been hit, and that was the first we heard of it. And that was a very difficult, somber, and sobering moment for us, because we now understood that, as one of our chaplains said, we had come to war with only tools of rescue. Right? We were the fire department. We weren't prepared to fight back.
Yep.
We just came to help. And now we were involved in one of the biggest attacks ever on American soil. As some say, it's our generation's Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And we were in it, under it.
Yeah.
And we were the decision makers. That was the thing. And I'm looking at some of the chiefs, and they're looking back at me like, holy crap. We trained for a lot of bad stuff, but nothing ever like this.
Yep.
So it was time to do the best we could do in a very bad situation, and the leadership huddled up. It was decided that myself, and representing the mayor, and Assistant Chief Donald Burns, would go to the South Tower. My good friend Donald Burns. He had 41 years in the New York City Fire Department, arguably the most experienced chief on that day. And we ran to the South Tower together. We had a little conversation. He went to the command post. I had to split off because there were some people trapped in an elevator, which was another horrific scene, watching people get burned and they're trapped and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you want to talk about people suffering and torture, I saw a lot of it in the tower that morning. A lot what these evil killers did to people. And we always have to tell the whole truth, and that's part of the whole truth, right? So firefighter Michael Lynch from Ladder 4 appeared out of nowhere. I told his widow later that he may as well have had angel wings coming out of his back of him, because he knew what to do to help those people in the elevator. He couldn't save them all, but we know he saved 3 women out of that elevator because they identify his photograph, and he's killed when the tower comes down. I go back to the command post. A lot of stuff happened. I leave the South Tower to get the paramedics because there were a lot of injured people in the South Tower lobby. That's why I went out the door. And I bring the 3 paramedics back. We're on the sidewalk, and the door is like 20 feet from us to go back into the South Tower, which is where we were heading. And that's when the building collapsed. So
Wow.
we were right on the sidewalk, about 20 feet away. We knew what it was. It was that loud that nobody had to question, or nobody had to say, "Oh, it's collapsing." Everybody knew. And so we ran into the Marriott Hotel next door to get some cover. We lost each other. The South Tower, 110 stories, collapsed onto the Marriott, and now the Marriott Hotel was collapsing around us. And I wind up crawling on my hands and knees. You couldn't see because the dust was so thick. You couldn't hear. I compare the noise to being on the tarmac at JFK, sitting there surrounded by 747s that are full blast. And every time you thought it was the loudest thing you ever heard, it would increase by 10, like every second, as the collapse came towards you. And I was under it. I wound up finding a big vertical column piece of steel. I know that from experience, that's where we find people in building collapses that survive. And I wrapped my arms around it, and my legs went up in the air. The wind later is scientifically proven to be where I was 160 miles an hour. And it was trying to blow me out into the street. And I knew if I let go of this column that I would be crushed and killed. And so this was my moment with God. And it was just a 3-second prayer. I said, "Dear God, I'm not afraid to come to you. In fact, one day I look forward to it. But please not now. I just want to hold my family one more time and tell them I love them." And probably within 5 or 15 seconds or something, the collapse was over. This part of the collapse was over. And I was alive. And I bounced around in that Marriott area, lobby, restaurant, because there was a restaurant where I was in. And I found a metal roll-down gate that was down. It turns out it was the roll-down gate that they would put down when the restaurant was closed at night. It separated the restaurant from the lobby of the hotel. And so I put my fingers under it to lift it up. And when I lifted it up an inch or two, all these fingers came from the other side. And there was a bunch of firemen and civilians who were trapped on the other side. And they were actually in the collapse. The collapse came right through the lobby where they were. And half the people that they were with, both firemen and civilians, were killed. And they were standing on this ledge that was a few feet wide. And on that side, it was 7-story drop. And on the other side where I was the metal roll-down gate. So we were able to get the gate up and get them moving back where we knew it was a little bit safer. And our group gets out and survives. I believe it's the largest group of survivors in the whole 16.5-acre complex. And so by the grace of God, I found that column. By the grace of God, I held on to that column in 160 mile an hour wind. I don't want to ever try that again because there's no way I held on to that without his strength.
Yeah.
They did a lot of studies, obviously, and I know one of the facts that I was fascinated with, grace of God,
Yes.
99% in that 16-acre collapse
Yeah.
perished.
Oh.
So you guys were in that 99% kill radius.
Oh yeah. No. Everybody was killed. I mean, there were very few people who lived.
Yeah.
We actually thought in the rescue and recovery effort that we would find people in voids and things like that. There weren't any.
You mentioned you were in the largest pocket of survivors. So were there other like one or two here or there? Or
Yeah. The Stairwell B in the North Tower. That's a famous movie that Oliver Stone did. Well, he did the one about the Port Authority. So there were two: the Port Authority cops that were trapped, who were some of the very last rescued. And then the Stairwell B, where Captain Jay Jonas and his company were miraculously in a stairwell where it just didn't collapse on them. Miraculous, the hand of God. There's no other in my mind. There's no other way they survived. Both of those were made into stories, made into movies. Someone did write a book a little bit about people in the Marriott, but it wasn't that accurate. And I never wanted to like these guys in Stairwell B. They probably didn't want movies and books to be made out of it. And the guys that raised the flag, the American flag, the three guys who, this famous photograph that was on stamps and it was on everything. These guys didn't want to be known. They didn't want anybody to know who they were. There were 343 of our guys buried in the rubble, and 37 Port Authority cops and 23 NYPD, and 2,755, I think the number is, in the World Trade Center. All those innocent people that were murdered, and people would say you're a hero and blah blah. No fireman wants to hear that. No cop wants to hear it. No military guy, especially when you lose your friends, because, as we say in the fire department, the only heroes are dead. And other than that, we did some brave stuff, but we're not heroes.
Yeah.
And that's how we feel. Yeah, so I survive it, and I want to talk also about surviving the aftermath, because that's a whole story. It's 24 years later now, and we have so the New York City Fire Department lost 343. 100 of them were my friends. Special Operations Command lost nearly 100. It wiped out our special operations. But in the last year or two, the post 9/11 illness deaths have exceeded the 343 number. So the New York City Fire Department is on a march to get to 1,000 murdered, right? Because they were all murdered by these Islamist Al-Qaeda terrorists. And that's just the fire department. The police department has much bigger numbers post 9/11. So that's one thing, and the other thing is surviving the guilt, surviving the anguish, surviving the PTS, and not killing yourself, avoiding suicide. And my family after 9/11 was very afraid that I was going to kill myself, because we were going to 3-4 funerals a day. There was one day when there were 22 funerals in one day. And every time I remember, every time I heard another name of a friend of mine, it was like someone took a baseball bat, like Babe Ruth took a baseball bat and swung his best swing into my gut. And my brother Chris and my friend Paul from Milwaukee would always know that I was going to hear another name. And so they were always standing next to me because they knew my knees were going to go out. And they picked me up every time they picked me up, and they stayed with me and they helped me. And so I'm very lucky there. And luckily I was never a guy who would commit suicide, but man, was it hard. And I prayed to God to find other quality men that I could have a beer with, that I could be boys with, that we could check girls out and like do man things, together. And because I lost all those guys. And what I found out is two things. God doesn't answer your prayer the way you think you want it to be answered, but he answers it in other ways. He brought me great love in a group of Brazilian women who, and it's funny, haha, right? But they actually, because of their culture, are very loving people. And when they found out my story, these ladies embraced me and loved me and spent time with me and made me laugh and cry and love. And they restored love for me. And then it took, at least 10 years after to start finding quality men like Jay, who had gone through different but similar things. And a guy go out and have a drink with, have a cigar with, or, just talk or laugh or cry or even kiss on the lips or whatever. I know he gets all red.
Hobby of you guys.
Yeah, he gets all red. He gets all red.
Not in a gay way, just to make people uncomfortable way.
So look, I am an example of going through some very, very dark times and making it to the other side. I call it Tim 2.0, and it takes a while. So my mantra is truth in history, which means the whole truth. Patience in grief, which doesn't mean 3 months or 6 months. It might mean 10 years. It doesn't happen in the time you want it to, but you have to hold on. Patience in grief, and resilience of the human spirit. And we are very resilient. You just have to ask for help. You have to have 2 ears to listen and 1 mouth. And you just have to be patient and wait. And if I had taken my own life years back, none of these beautiful things would have happened in my life. And life is beautiful and wonderful, and you just have to be patient and do one. Admiral McCraven says, make your bed, right? So you start out in the morning, you do one thing that makes you feel good about yourself. And then maybe in a week or two, you do 2 things in that day. And you just keep increasing it, and you make yourself do it. To this day, I make my bed every day.
And you've gone on now, obviously the healing journey took a while, but what you've gone on to do is you've given back in tremendous ways. You speak to federal agencies and military groups about 9/11, and a lot of these things that you talked about: patience and grief, resilience. There's so much power in having an individual. I do it too, talking about how we overcome trauma and deal with those things. But amazing. I've watched your journey and how you've done that, and also. You've been instrumental in the 9/11 Museum and are there on a regular basis giving tours. If any of you have never been to the 9/11 Museum, I really encourage you to go. It is a very somber place, I won't lie. But you know what? You need to go. It was the largest massacre of not just Americans. It's the thing you need to understand. It was 90 countries.
Over 90 countries.
Yeah, 90 countries were killed when those towers fell. And there was so much heroism. There's so many amazing stories. There's so much incredible things that happened despite this attack on our country and on our people. And you've been directly involved. I every time I go and listen to Tim talk, it just blows me away. I mean, the story you heard today is skirting the wave tops of,
That's right,
the depth of your story and these things. And that's what we're about. I mean, that's what Patriot Seltzer is about. We want to honor, the reality is Tim's story is unique. My story is unique. Lou's story is unique. But across this nation, there are millions and millions of amazing proud patriots, individuals who believe in this country, who love this country, who are protectors, who are sacrificing day in and day out, and they never know when this big moment will come. That's reality. None of us, anything that's ever happened to somebody big, didn't wake up that morning like, today's the day that I'm going to do something big. It happens, and all they want to do is go home to their family, man. I prayed the same prayer that Tim did on the battlefield that night, like, help me to go home to my family. So, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, these stories need to get out there. Like your story, it's powerful, and it speaks to a lot of truths about humanity, truths about the world that people need to hear. So, I mean, I'm glad we could have this. I'm glad we could tell more people about it. I'm glad to have you on the can where more people can learn about it and learn about American history, you, and just the sacrifices people make.
Patriot Seltzer.
I don't know where our yellow cans went, but Tim will be our next proud patriot. So, we got this guy's ugly mug on our red cans. We got Lou Veloci, our law enforcement, coming on the green cans. And in honor of the hive and the bumblebees.
The yellow stripes.
Yeah, that's right. On the yellow can will be my friend and brother, Tim Brown, guys. That is our next amazing proud patriot. So, guys, Patriot Seltzer, go buy one. Not only does it taste great, not only do you get to raise a glass and honor and have fun and enjoy a great beverage, but that it's going back to honor the proud patriots. Yeah. And part of our proceeds go back to support organizations that support our proud patriots.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.